Hare Krishna. Today we will start with chapter 6, An Unknown Friend. Let the sharp moralists accuse me of being illusioned. I do not mind. Experts in Vedic activities may slander me as being misled. Friends and relatives may call me frustrated. My brothers may call me a fool. The Validi Maimonides may point me out as mad. And the learned philosophers may assert that I am much too proud. Still, my mind does not budge an inch from the determination to serve the lotus feet of Govinda, though I am unable to do it. Madhvendra Puri. Aside from his difficulties with business and family, Abe had to survive the cataclysms of Indian independence and partition. He was not active politically, but was one of hundreds of millions affected by the violent dawn of Indian independence. While Gandhi and the Hindu dominated Congress were demanding a united free India, the Muslim League, led by M.A. Jinnah, called for partition and their own Muslim nation, Pakistan. The conflict raged. In August 1946, the outgoing British government invited Jawaharlal Nehru, Congress Party president, to form an interim national government, but the League objected. The Muslim cause would be denied. Jinnah had already declared August 16 Direct Action Day, which amounted to little in most parts of India but in Calcutta erupted in Hindu Muslim rioting. In 5 days of violence, 4,000 died and thousands more were wounded. In the months that followed, Hindu Muslim rioting repeatedly flared up throughout India. Early in 1947, when the new Viceroy, Lord Mountbatten, met with Indian political leaders to plan transfer of power, riots again broke out as Muslims demanded Pakistan. At the threat of civil war, Congress finally agreed on partition, and on July 18, the Indian Independence Bill passed without dissent. 1 month later, India and Pakistan emerged as independent nations with Jawaharlal Nehru as India's first Prime Minister. Partition tore India, leaving 5 million Sikhs and Hindus in Pakistan and as many Muslims in India. And the Great Migration began. Refugees fleeing from Pakistan to India and from India to Pakistan clashed with each other and even with their own countrymen of the opposing faith, and the violence that erupted claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. Srila Prabhupada. Our independence movement was started by Mahatma Gandhi for uniting all the different sections of the people. But actually, the result was that instead of being united, India was partitioned. And the partition became so poisonous that formerly there was only sporadic Hindu Muslim riots in some places. But now there was organized fighting between Pakistan and Hindustan. So actually, we were not being united, we were being separated. The Hindus would go to the mosque of the Muslim and break it, and the Muslim would go to the temples of the Hindu and break the idol. And they will think, we have finished the Hindu's God. Just like the Hindus also think, oh, we have broken their God. They are all ignorant. God cannot be Hindu. God cannot be Muslim. God cannot be Christian. God is God. We have seen in 1947 Hindu Muslim fighting. One party was Hindu, the other party was Muslim. They fought and so many died. And after death, there was no distinction who was Hindu or who was Muslim. The municipal men gathered them together in piles to throw them somewhere. They fought, and in Bagh Bazar there were heaps of dead bodies. And when it is a dead body, nobody could understand who was Hindu and who was Muslim. Simply it was to be cleaned from the road. Abhay was not expecting Indian independence to bring any real solutions unless the leaders were God conscious. What change would there be? Now he saw that instead of suffering at the hand of a foreign rule, the people were free to suffer under their own countrymen. In fact, the fighting and suffering had increased. Throughout the years of India's political struggles, Abe had never lost his desire to propagate Krishna consciousness. He had seen how promises of unity and independence had brought mostly higher prices and civic mismanagement. He had seen neighborhoods where Indians had lived peacefully for generations, erupt in hatred and rioting. In the wake of British and Indian diplomatic manipulations, it was as Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had described it. Persons who are strongly entrapped by the consciousness of enjoying material life and who have therefore accepted as a leader or guru a similar blind man attached to external sense objects cannot understand that the goal of life is to return home back to Godhead and engage in the service of Lord Vishnu. As blind men, guided by another blind man, miss the right path and fall into a ditch, materially attached men, led by another materially attached man, are bound by the ropes of fruitive labor, which are made of very strong cords, and they continue again and again in materialistic life, suffering the threefold miseries. The Vaishnava prays to his spiritual master, who has opened my eyes with the torchlight of transcendental knowledge, and he feels obliged to help humanity by bearing the same torch. As a representative of the eternal Vaishnava Parampara, Abhay wanted to shed the light of transcendental knowledge onto the field of current crisis. That had been the purpose of Back to Godhead, although since 1944 he had been unable to print the magazine. But even without the means to publish, Abhay continued writing. His most ambitious project was Gita Upanishad, his translation and commentary of Bhagavad Gita. Gandhi and others often spoke of the wisdom of Bhagavad Gita. Indians never forgot their Gita, but most proponents did not teach it as Krishna had taught it. They would not recognize Lord Krishna, the speaker of their Gita, as the supreme personality of Godhead, but would extract his words as slogans to bolster their own philosophies. Whether political leaders, religious leaders, or scholars, they almost invariably made their own symbolic and allegorically interpretations. Abhay wanted to present Bhagavad Gita as it is. It was to be 1200 pages, three illustrated, beautifully bound volumes. For Abhay, the books were already a reality, from which he was separated only by time. Over the past 2 years, he had accumulated hundreds of manuscript pages. He wrote in notebooks and on loose papers and then typed the numbered manuscript pages. He could never give the book his full time, but gradually it began to take shape. He also preached Lord Chaitanya's message through letters, writing to many leaders in the government, to respectable acquaintances, and to people whose articles he had read or whose activities had caught his eye in the newspaper. Presenting himself as a humble servant, he wrote to them of his ideas on how India's original Krishna conscious culture could be applied as the successful solution to all manners of dilemmas. Sometimes his letters drew replies, and Abhay would respond, fanning the sparks of interest wherever he found them. A well known reformer, Mahendra Pratap Raja, was forming what he called the World Federation. Abhay had read a news sheet which Mr. Pratap had published from Vrindavan, in which he addressed all nations and peoples of the world and called for a unity of mankind. Abhay wrote to him suggesting that Lord Krishna's teaching in Bhagavad Gita provided a theistic science capable of uniting all religions. Mr. Pratap replied in May 1947, I admire your deep study of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. I myself am a great admirer of the great classic. I assure you that I am working strictly according to the book. Mr. Pratap mentioned his book, Religion of Love, and suggested that Abhay read it if he wanted to know the World Federation's view of religion. In the meanwhile, Mr. Pratap wrote, I do not agree to your suggestion of making the name of Krishna or Govinda as the basis of the unity of religions. This would amount to conversion and won't lead to unity of religions. I highly appreciate your efforts in the direction of Back to Godhead. Abhay got the book, read it, and in July 1947, while he was visiting Kanpur, wrote a reply. He had traveled to Kanpur not as a spiritual teacher but as a pharmaceutical salesman. Yet a typewriter writer had been available, and out had come his preaching. In continuation of my last postcard, I beg to inform you that I have finished the reading of your book, Religion of Love. In my opinion, The whole thesis is based on the philosophy of pantheism and the approaches made by the services of mankind. Religion of love is the true religious idea, but if the approach is made through the service of mankind only, then the process is made imperfect, partial, and unscientific. The true religion of love is perfectly inculcated in the Bhagavad Gita. Besides, you have not quoted any authority for all your statements, so it is more or less dogmatic. If different men put different dogmatic views about religion and its essentials, who is to be accepted and who is not to be? Therefore, the approach shall be and must be authoritative, scientific, and universal. Abhay then gave a summary of the Bhagavad Gita in 10 points, concluding the highest service that can be rendered to mankind is, therefore, to preach the philosophy and religion of Bhagavad Gita for all time, all places, and all people. But extended philosophical dialogue was not usually the result of his letters. In 1947, when Abhay wrote to high government officers of the newly formed Government of India suggesting a remedy for riots, they turned him away. When he asked to talk with the governor of West Bengal, the governor's secretary replied, His Excellency regrets that he is unable to grant you an interview at present, owing to heavy pressure of work. When he wrote to the Assistant Secretary to the Minister of Education, an assistant to the Assistant Secretary replied, The Government of India regret that they are unable to accede to your request. Sometimes official interest took the form of a patronizing pat on the head. I am sure your scheme for establishing peace will meet with response from our Prime Minister. And another, he, the Minister of Education, is glad to see you are taking to root out communalism. He suggests that you get in touch with dash dash dash. A local official asked not to be seen. Thank you for all that you have written and the fine sentiments which you have expressed. It is no use arguing the matter as I do not think that I can serve very useful purpose by joining the organization which you wish to set up, and therefore you need not take the trouble of seeing me. I wish you, however, all success. In October, after the Calcutta riots of 1947, Abhay wrote to the chairman of the Rehabilitation Committee, who replied, Regarding Hari Kirtan and Prasadam, you may make any program of your own, but I am afraid I am not interested in the same, nor my committee, and therefore there is no necessity of your meeting with me. Abhay was fulfilling his role as a Vaishnava preacher, and the secretaries of the various government offices were recognizing and addressing him as such. But they could not appreciate his applications of the philosophy of Bhagavad Gita and his suggestions for Hari Kirtan. Occasionally, however, someone seemed interested. Mr. N.P. Asthana, High Court advocate, replied, I am very much obliged to you for your letter regarding your broad scheme about spiritual improvement. I thoroughly appreciate the fine feelings which you have prompted you to write this letter and the kindness with which you have considered my query. I have been a student of Bhagavad Gita and have also imbibed some of its teachings, but I still lack a good deal and will be glad to be guided by a person of your accomplishment. You may kindly, therefore, send your scheme to me, on receipt of which I will be able to express my views. It was inevitable that Abhay would think of engaging Mahatma Gandhi in devotional service. Because of his lifetime of courageous, ascetic, and moral activities on behalf of his countrymen, Mahatma Gandhi had great power to influence the Indian masses. As with Mahendra Pratap of the World Federation, Mahatma Gandhi's idea of serving God was to try to bring happiness to man through politics and through his own invented methods. As one Englishman had said of Mahatma Gandhi, he is neither a saint amongst the politicians or a politician amongst the saints. But be that as it may, he was not as yet fully engaged in pure devotional service, and his activities were not those of a Mahatma as described in Bhagavad Gita. The Gita defines a Mahatma as one who fully engages in worshipping Lord Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, always chanting his glories. The Mahatma encourages others to surrender to Krishna. But because as a young man, Abhay had been a follower of Gandhi's, Abhay had a special feeling for him. Of course, Srila Bhakti Siddhant Saraswati had later convinced him to engage exclusively in devotional service. But now, Abhay felt his old friendship for Gandhi, even though Gandhi was a towering figure of worldwide fame and Abhay unknown both to Gandhi and to the world. On December 7, 1947, Abhay wrote to Gandhi from Kanpur. Gandhi was living at the Birla Mansion in Delhi, where large military forces throughout the city discouraged Hindu Muslim rioting. Gandhi's secretary, Pyarelal Nair, described Gandhi at this time as the saddest man one could picture. The men he had led in the struggle for Indian independence, Jawaharlal Nehru, Vallabhbhai Patel, and others had taken the leadership of the nation, and Gandhi, with his doctrines of non-violence, unity, and agrarianism, was now at odds with them in many ways. He feared he was becoming an anachronism. His former colleagues admired him but rejected his leadership. All his programs, Hindu Muslim unity, non violence, upliftment for the poor, although praised throughout the world, were failures in the India of 1947. On a recent visit to a Muslim refugee camp, a crowd of Muslims who surrounded his car had cursed him. And at a public prayer meeting, a Hindu crowd had shouted him down and ended his meeting when he had attempted to read from the Quran. At 78 years, Gandhi was physically weak and melancholy. In all likelihood, Abhay's letter would never reach him. Abhay knew it. Sending a letter to Gandhi would be like putting a note in a bottle and sending it to sea. It would arrive in the flood of mail, and Gandhi would be too busy to see it. But Abhay sent it nonetheless. Dear friend Mahatma Ji, please accept my respectful namaskar. I am your unknown friend, but I had to write to you at times and again, although you never cared to reply them. I sent you my papers back to Godhead, but your secretaries told me that you have very little time to read the letters and much less for reading the magazines. I asked for an interview with you, but your busy secretaries never cared to reply this. Anyway, as I am your very old friend, although unknown to you, I am writing to you in order to bring you to the rightful position deserved by you. As a sincere friend, I must not deviate from my duty towards a friend like your good self. I tell you as a sincere friend that you must immediately retire from active politics if you do not desire to die an inglorious death. You have 125 years to live as you have desired to live, but if you die an inglorious death, it is no worth. The honor and prestige that you have obtained during the course of your present lifetime were not possible to be obtained by anyone else within the living memory. But you must know that all these honors and prestiges were false in as much as they were created by the illusory energy of Godhead called the Maya. By this falsity, I do not mean to say that your so many friends were false to you, nor you were false to them. By this falsity, I mean illusion, or in other words, the false friendship and honors obtained thereby were but creation of Maya, and therefore they are always temporary or false, as you may call it. But none of you, neither your friends nor yourself, know this truth. A sadhu is not supposed to flatter but to cut. This is the basis of his friendship, that he cuts away the illusion of the materialistic person. Mahatma Gandhi, forsaken by his friends, bitterly disappointed at the outcome of the long, hard struggle for Indian independence and apprehensive about the future, had been reduced to a position in which he might be able to realize that his friends and work were ultimately illusory. Thus, it was the perfect time for him to comprehend Abhay's message. Now, By the grace of God, that illusion is going to be cleared, and thus your faithful friends like Acharya Kriplani and others are accusing you for your inability at the present moment to give them any practical program of work as you happen to give them during your glorious days of non cooperation movement. So you are also in a plight to find out a proper solution for the present political tangle created by your opponents. You should therefore take a note of warning from your insignificant friend like me that unless you retire timely from politics and engage yourself 100% in the preaching work of Bhagavad Gita, which is the real function of the Mahatmas, you shall have to meet with such inglorious deaths as Mussolini, Hitler, or Lloyd George met with.